All right, so let's dive into something I think we've all thought about at some point. Like, what does it actually mean to be rich? Something we've all wondered about, right?
Yeah, definitely a question that seems so simple at first, but then when you really start thinking about it, it gets really complicated.
Totally. So today we're going to take a deep dive into this Reddit thread on our money that really gets into this whole debate about what rich means.
Okay, cool.
So the original poster makes good money, but doesn't feel rich at all, but their friends who make minimum wage think they're loaded.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it just sparked this really interesting conversation about how we all see wealth differently, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And it's so interesting how just the simple question like makes you think about like income and wealth and lifestyle and even just like the psychology of what it means to feel rich. You
Right. It's like, yeah, we all have these images in our heads of what being rich means, like, mansions and yachts.
Right, right.
But one of the things that really jumped out at me from this Reddit thread was that, like, income doesn't equal wealth, you know?
Yeah, totally. And one commenter, Word2DWise, said something that I thought was really interesting. They said, income is just a tool. It's not the goal itself. It's more about what you do with the money, how you manage it and invest it
Mm,
and grow it. That's what determines your actual wealth.
right.
They were really emphasizing the idea of net worth, like your assets minus your liabilities,
Okay.
is a better way to see where you really stand financially.
That's really interesting because I think I've always just thought about income as the main thing.
Yeah.
But when I think about it now, I know people who make decent money, but they're like drowning in debt.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, just having a high income doesn't necessarily mean you're financially secure or wealthy.
Exactly. And you see that all over this thread, people sharing their own experiences. Like one person, Strange Mikey D, talked about feeling rich for the first time when they could fill their gas tank without having to like worry about the cost.
Oh yeah, I can totally relate to that. It's not about having luxury, but that feeling of like relief
Right.
when you don't have that financial stress. It's like a weight lifted off your
Totally.
shoulders.
It really shows how much of this is like emotional and psychological, you know, like how we feel about our finances.
Yeah.
Another commenter, Externate, brought up something else that's important, location. They said that a salary that might make you feel wealthy in like rural Oklahoma could leave you struggling in a place like Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
The cost of living is such a big factor.
It's like that saying, location, location, location. And it makes you
Exactly.
realize that, like, what's considered rich is totally different depending on where you live.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it made me think about something else. We hear a lot about lifestyle inflation.
Mm-hmm.
Someone in the thread mentioned doctors who make tons of money but are living paycheck to paycheck
Oh, wow.
because they're spending more as their income goes up.
Yeah, that's so common. It's like our needs and wants just keep growing along with our income. You start getting used to a certain lifestyle, and then all of a sudden, things you never thought you needed become normal.
Yeah, like a bigger house or a fancy car.
Exactly. Or like expensive vacations. It's like a never-ending cycle. You make more money, you spend more money, and then you just keep wanting more.
Right. And it makes me wonder about those stories we hear about billionaires who are still trying to make even more money. Like,
Yeah.
is there ever a point where it's actually enough?
That's such a good question, you know? And it makes you think about like the psychology of wealth.
Hmm.
Like one commenter, forward Tangelo2592, said that even though they had more money than ever before, they actually felt poorer
Huh.
because their perspective had changed. Like what used to feel like a lot of money now felt small compared to their new financial reality.
Wow, that's crazy. So it's like our idea of wealth is always changing,
Totally.
and it's based on our own experiences and who we're comparing ourselves to.
Exactly. It's not just about some fixed number. It's all about your mindset.
Totally.
It's like, are we always chasing that feeling of security or are we just constantly wanting more no matter how much we already have?
This is getting deep. But, someone in the thread mentioned the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early.
Oh, yeah, FIRE. Yeah, TJ and Weak Sauce was talking about some of the key ideas behind FIRE. And basically, it comes down to having enough passive income to cover your expenses.
Okay.
So from things like investments or rental properties, so you don't need to work a traditional job.
So it's like you're making your money work for you
Exactly.
instead of you always working for money. That sounds pretty good.
Right. And it goes back to that idea of wealth being about freedom and choice. It's not just about how much money you have, but about the options and opportunities that come with being financially secure.
So you have the freedom to choose how you spend your time, what you do, and how you define success for yourself.
Precisely. And that brings us to a really important point that we've seen throughout this whole discussion.
Okay?
Rich is subjective. It means different things to different people,
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-size-fits-all definition.
right? It's about so much more than just a number. It's about your values, your lifestyle, how secure and free you feel, and ultimately how you define a good life.
Yeah, a rich and fulfilling life.
And that's something we all need to think about for ourselves. What does rich really mean to you? What are you hoping to achieve? And what can you do right now to create that kind of richness in your life?
That's such a powerful question. And maybe the answer changes over time as our lives change too.
Absolutely. There's so much more to uncover in this Reddit thread about different perspectives on what it means to be rich. I think you'll be surprised by some of the things people are saying.
Okay, I'm ready for more. Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive into what it really means to be rich.
Welcome back to our deep dive into what it really means to be rich. We've seen so far that it's so much more than just dollars and cents, right?
Yeah, it's been really cool to hear all these different perspectives and to realize how much like our own experiences and where we live and even just how we think about things affect how we see wealth.
Totally. And as we keep going through this Reddit thread, we're finding even more interesting takes on wealth. Sometimes I think we get so caught up in the complicated financial stuff,
Yeah.
like investing and all
Yeah,
that,
sure, for sure.
that we forget about the simpler, more relatable things that make people feel rich.
Yeah, totally. And that's what really stood out to me in this thread, like those personal stories about feeling rich that weren't about like having millions of dollars or anything.
Yeah, exactly. Like, remember Strange Mikey B talking about that feeling of richness from being able to fill their gas tank without worrying?
Oh yeah, totally. Like I said, I can relate to that. It's not about having a ton of money. It's about having enough that you don't have to stress about every little thing.
Right. And there were so many other comments like that, too. Like,
Yeah.
one person said they felt rich when they didn't have to check their bank account balance before buying something.
Yeah.
And someone else talked about thinking about buy groceries without worrying about the price. It's about those everyday moments where you feel secure and in control of your finances.
Yeah, like a feeling of ease, you know?
Exactly. It's a good reminder that rich is relative. What feels like a lot to one person might not feel like enough to someone else. It all depends on your own situation.
Yeah, for sure. This whole idea of perspective makes me think about lifestyle inflation again, which we were talking about before.
Oh, yeah, how our needs and wants seem to grow when our income grows.
Exactly. It's crazy how easily that can happen. And it's not even just about like buying more stuff, right?
No, it's not. Lifestyle inflation can happen in every part of your life, like the restaurants you go to, the vacations you take, even the kinds of experiences you're looking for.
Right. It makes you wonder if there's a way to like break out of that cycle of always wanting more.
Uh-huh.
Like even when you're already doing pretty well financially, how do you stop yourself from constantly wanting to upgrade everything?
Yeah, that's a tough question. A lot of financial experts and even philosophers have thought about that. Some people say you should focus on experiences and relationships instead of material things, and really be mindful about what you're spending your money on.
So like asking yourself if a purchase is actually going to make you happier or if you're just trying to keep up with other people.
Exactly. Others say it's important to set clear financial goals and stick to a budget no matter how much money you're making.
Mhm.
That way you feel more secure and you're not tempted to overspend just because you can.
It's like having a plan and being smart about your spending habits, even when your income goes up.
Right. But then you see those stories about billionaires who are still obsessed with making more and more money. It's like that desire for more is just part of human nature.
Yeah, it's like it never ends. So is true wealth really about being content with what you have and appreciating it? Or is it always about chasing something more, even when you've already achieved so much?
Man, that's such a deep question. It makes me wonder if sometimes that constant chasing actually keeps us from experiencing real wealth.
Yeah, like maybe true wealth is more about feeling fulfilled and having a purpose in life,
You're getting at something really important there, and it connects back to the FIRE movement that we talked about earlier.
right? Financial independence, retire early.
Yeah. Even though retiring early might not be everyone's goal, the ideas behind FIRE are relevant to anyone who wants financial freedom
Uh-huh.
and the ability to make choices based on what they care about, not just what they can afford.
So it's about having options and flexibility, like having your money work for you instead of the other way around.
Exactly, and that can look different for everyone. Some people might invest in the stock market,
Right.
other might buy rental properties or start an online business. There's no one right way to do it.
So the main thing is to take control of your finances and create options for yourself, whether that's retiring early, pursuing a passion project, or just having more flexibility and freedom to live the life you want.
Exactly. It's about shifting your thinking from how much money do I need to be rich to how can I use my money to create the life I want.
So it's less about just accumulating wealth and more about making sure your financial goals match up with your values and what you want in life.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting when we move beyond just looking at income and net worth and material things and focus on what truly fulfills us. The definition of rich becomes much more personal and meaningful.
It's like realizing that true wealth is about so much more than just money. It's about living a life that feels rich and meaningful to you, a life that feels fulfilling and aligned with what truly matters.
You said it perfectly, and I think this Reddit thread, even though it started as a conversation about money, has given us a really good look at all the different ways people define and experience richness.
Yeah, we've heard stories about people feeling rich from simple things like having a full gas tank or not stressing about groceries. We've talked about financial freedom and being able to follow your passions without money being a problem. And we've even talked about the importance of feeling content and grateful for what you have.
It's a good reminder that there's no one right answer to the question of what rich means. It's something we each have to figure out for ourselves based on our own values, experiences, and goals.
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole conversation so interesting. It makes us think about what we believe about wealth and what really matters to us in life. What does rich mean to you? What are you working towards? And what can you start doing today to create that kind of richness in your own life, no matter how much money you have right now? We'll keep talking about this in our final segment, so stay tuned. Okay, so we're back for the last part of our deep dive into rich, and I gotta say this whole conversation has really made me think about what I believe about wealth.
Yeah, me too. It's so easy to just focus on the money part of it.
Right. But like one thing I've been thinking about is whether being rich actually means being happy. Like, is that always true?
That's a really good point. I think it's important to remember that money can definitely make things easier,
Uh-huh.
but it doesn't guarantee happiness, you know?
Yeah, totally. Like, we all know people who have a ton of money, but they're still unhappy. They might be lonely or have problems in their relationships or just feel like something's missing.
And money can solve some problems, but it can't fix everything. And on the other hand, there are tons of people who don't have a lot of money, but they're still really happy and fulfilled.
Yeah, they find joy in their relationships and their passions and just in making a difference in the world.
Exactly. So maybe true richness isn't just about how much money you have. It's more about feeling content and grateful for what you do have, no matter what your financial situation is.
Yeah, and finding meaning and purpose that goes beyond just material stuff.
That's so important. And it goes back to what we were saying before about defining wealth for yourself. Like if you're always focused on what other people have or what society tells you is successful, you might miss out on the things that really matter to you.
Yeah, you might miss out on the things that actually make you feel rich and fulfilled.
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive, I think the biggest takeaway from this whole conversation is that there are so many different ways to be rich.
Yeah, for sure.
We've heard stories about people feeling rich from simple things like having enough gas in their car or being able to buy groceries without worrying.
Right.
And we've talked about financial freedom and being able to pursue your passions without being held back by money. And then there's the idea of feeling content and grateful no matter how much money you have.
It just shows that there's no one right answer to the question of what rich means. It's all about what matters to you as an individual.
Absolutely. The most important thing is to make sure your financial goals are aligned with your values and what you really want out of life.
Yeah, and that's what makes this whole discussion so valuable. It makes us think about what we believe about wealth and what we want our own lives to look like.
So as we finish up here, I want you to ask yourself, what does rich mean to you? Is it about having a lot of money, having freedom to do what you want, feeling secure, having strong relationships, making a positive impact on the world?
Or maybe it's a mix of all of those things. The important thing is to figure out what truly matters to you.
Yeah, and then start taking steps to create that kind of richness in your own life. No matter where you are financially right now, you have the power to build a life that feels rich and meaningful to you.
And that's what we're all about here on Voices of the Soul, helping you find that richness and meaning in your life.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a great conversation.
And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the things that matter most.